or the leadership of these public labor unions basically control the labor management agreements, the negotiation of these labor management agreements. So we're talking some real money here. The city has a payroll probably about, give or take $3.5 billion for its 30,000 employees, and then you figure another $350 million for healthcare benefits, and pensions are probably close to $1 billion. So we're talking about some real change here. And I think, given that we're footing the bill, and given that we're getting screwed in some of the services that we can provide, or not being provided, I think this is a very good beginning.
Absolutely.
And also that we vote.
Well, that's what we're going to do. So we got to approve the amendment first. Yes, sir?
No, there is no amendment. It's incorporated in the motion.
Okay. Let's vote on the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. So I get it. Okay, we have a large majority.
Could you repeat the motion?
No, it's a whole thing. It's a whole bit out. Right on time.
Yep.
And our secretary is taking the count right now.
38.
Okay, all those opposed, it'll be easier that way. 1. All those abstaining. 1, 2, 2. So what we're seeing, right in a row. 3. 1, 2, 3, like a triangle. So motion passes. Thank you, Jack. I don't see Ron or in the room, so why don't we move on to reports, and then as soon as they come in, we'll stop. So we'll start with the Power LA, Grace Liu, the general manager.
Sorry. Hi, good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Yeah? Awesome. Thank you, first of all, for all of your patience while we've been working on our funding and closing it out and trying to launch this new funding. I really appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten to make this new funding system great and much easier for you, I hope. So we did successfully get the ordinance passed at City Council on Wednesday to open the checking account system. This is probably like the fastest, Steer Martinez told me the fastest he's ever seen an ordinance go through. So, really appreciate Councilmember Parks for pushing that through. And actually see our newly elected controller, actually I wanna give him the mic. Terry?
Yep, I'm sorry.
Can I give Ron the mic? I would love to hear from him.
No, but go ahead and finish your comments and your report, and then Ron will comment.
Okay. So here's what the schedule is going to look like for the new funding program. We're going to close out the old one per the deadlines that you've already established. So you have until noon, June 14th to use your purchase cards. Again, that's noon our time because they're just based on Eastern Standard Time when they close down. Please don't wait till the last minute to ask for your P card increases because it's taking us at least 1 to 2 full days to actually do those increases because we have to look at each one and make sure what you're purchasing is allowable. And then we can go, and that you actually have the funds in your account so that we can increase those balances for you. The June, you're going to be getting an email from us asking your second signatory and your treasurer to provide us their information so that we can open the account. We can open accounts based on you guys either faxing or scanning your contact or your driver's license and a major credit card to us so that we can open it. Then we'll give you a signature card and you would just go into your local Wells Fargo bank to go ahead and submit that and so that they can finalize the accounts. We'll also have some online trainings in terms of the new system looks like. Wells Fargo also have online trainings for their bank accounts so that the second signatory and the treasurer will know how to use that system. Do you have any questions on yes?
Come in.
We have a Wells Fargo in our community that, I'm in here, it's actually in La Crescenta and not in Sunlight to Hunter. Does it have, the branch have to be in the city of LA? No, because most of your banking is going to be online. You will have the debit/credit card, and you don't ever really need to walk into the bank because you're not allowed to pull cash from these accounts. The walking into the bank teller is just to drop off the signature card, and you can actually just provide that to us too, and we can do it for you on your behalf.
Receipt, you got one here.
Yes.
Is it still gonna be the 4625?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The $44,650
Per
quarter?
No, we're basically, we've changed it so that, you will be provided the, yes, well, you get 37,000, but you don't get it all up front. So we'll start you off with, 4,000, so to cover you in July, August, and then starting in your July/August meetings, you just be requesting additional funds from us, depending on what you have coming up each month. So, we'll be basing it that way, as opposed to those quarterly limits. So just on a monthly basis, just let us know how much you need. Your board has approved for funding for the next month, and then just request it and we'll provide it for you so long as your monthly reconciliations are given to us.
As far as getting that monthly approval, as opposed to full board approval, could we get by with just executive committee approval? It might facilitate it a little bit better.
You mean for the,
For the monthly funding request. In other words,
oh, yeah, we're trying to make that easier. It might just be the second signature and the treasurer just making that approval for that funding. Because we understand sometimes, something comes up suddenly, and so there'll be supplemental funding requests if you can't do it on a monthly basis. Something happens in a month, you can just go ahead and ask us again for the funds, and we'll provide them to you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any last questions? Any last questions? Because we're going to be Ron Galperin, our news controller-elect. Was that it? You have one more?
So I'll just speak after Ron, because I think we'll wrap up some election stuff,
And then parking passes.
Yeah, we have parking passes today for those of you who might have brought them. If you didn't, don't worry about it. Joe has them in the back, so you can sign them out. It's 2 per neighbor council, and then we have extras at the end of everybody getting there too. We'll give those NCs the additional ones, extra ones.
Cindy, you have a question?
I just want to compliment Gracie and the department for, this is a huge milestone for neighbor council. Thank you very much for.
Like, be careful with that.
Yeah, we have done it with outdoor support and from our parks and the controller's office, every CEO, CLA, so many people were involved in it, so I really appreciate it.
How are you?
They'd like to get a picture real quick for the department.
Oh, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, our new controller.
Yeah. Aren't you the first neighborhood council member to be elected to city council?
I think so.
All right. So you are, yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Sorry.
What a pleasure to be here as your controller-elect, and it's been an exciting the last week and a half, and the gravity of the position is really setting in right now. It's one thing, of course, to win an election. It's a totally different thing to do the job and to do it right. And I'm very committed to making sure that that happens, because there is so much to do. Let me back up and just tell you how I started this odyssey, this crazy odyssey of running for controller many, many years ago. And I didn't even realize it was going to lead to this particular path. But I remember getting a letter from the then council member of the district that I live in, and it was explaining basically to everybody in the neighborhood why our street was not going to get repaid anytime soon. And it was a very nice letter, but basically it explained that year we had about 6,500 miles of streets, and that we were budgeted for about 175 miles of repaving. And so you divide that 175 miles up by 15 council districts, Do the math, and we really like to pave your street, but it could take up to 30 years. And I got this letter, and I thought, this is kind of crazy. I've lived in Los Angeles now for about 28 years, and I'm the first in my family to be born in the United States. Really so blessed that my parents came here, and that I was able to get a great education, to go to law school, and to be an attorney and a business person, and I was a journalist also for many years. But then, in this city of great possibilities, to get a letter that basically says, well, you can wait up to 30 years to get your street repaved. I thought something is severely wrong. And what is that? And where are the problems? And of course, the problems are about the money. And not just whether we have enough of it or not, but how it is that we use it, or misuse it, or waste it, and how it goes astray. So it led me to become obsessed increasingly with everything having to do with the city's finances. And then I got involved with my neighborhood council, and actually Steve Twining, who's former president of the neighborhood council, is here as well. And then began to learn more and more about all of the neighborhoods in Los Angeles, all the challenges that we face, and all the challenges that neighborhood councils face, plus everything that we as neighborhood council members can do and often have been frustrated in being able to do, and how we can kind of break out of that. And that led to neighborhood council budget advocates, and there are a number of those who are here that have been neighborhood council budget advocates, and really an opportunity to delve even deeper into the finances of the city, look at all sorts of opportunities, as I mentioned, to save money, to bring in money, to get more efficient, all of those things. And then, of course, in the process, you learn that it's much easier to say, this can be very easily fixed. Why don't we do that tomorrow? And then you realize, it's not quite so simple as doing that, but you got to take the first steps, because if you don't do that, then you don't get to your destination in terms of actually seeing some change happen. So this is the background of what led me to run for controller. Now let me fast forward for a moment and just say that what I've been doing for the last week and a half is actually getting a good handle over the office and really going on a listening tour, meeting with everybody who's in that office and finding out what they do, how they do it, what their challenges are. And my very first day after the election, I thought Tuesday I might be able to, Tuesday was the election, of course, that Wednesday I might get a little bit of rest. No. Instead, what was happening was that Thursday is when the city council was going to be reviewing the budget, as many of you know. And in that was a provision that was going to essentially gut all of the money available for outside audits of city departments. It used to be about $750,000 worth, then it got cut to $500,000, and they wanted to cut all of it out. So I found myself spending the whole day, right after the election on Wednesday, calling a bunch of council members and becoming the lobbyist and saying, you can't do this. And it's not always about having more resources, because more is not always better, but you at least need something. And there are so many opportunities to really save money in those departments if you don't have the resources to at least some rudimentary auditing, then what can you do? So that was the first job, actually, and I'm going to be continuing to work on that, as well as figuring out how we use the resources that we have in a better way. Which leads me back to neighborhood councils. Because there are so many people in this room who, and I know personally from having been in a neighborhood council for so many years, as well as part of the budget advocates, who have great ideas, great knowledge. I'll be very honest, I get my best ideas often from other people, and people who have actually delved into particular subjects. People like Jack Duncanville, who's here, and who always has some very interesting insights, not to mention some ideas, and is a great advocate. But there are a lot of advocates who are here, and we have to start as a city really engaging everybody. Not just listening, not just paying lip service to, we want to engage our neighborhood councils. That's wonderful. But we actually want to really put you to work. It's not just about listening, but it's about you actually being able to do something with the knowledge that you have. So one of the things I plan to do is to really convene a group that is going to be on a regular basis, and I'm going to be meeting with a number of the budget advocates about how we can integrate that in the best way possible with the controller's office, and how the controller's office can capitalize on the brain trust, not to mention steal a couple of your ideas. So that's how we're going to move the city forward. Now, what I'm trying to do in the next couple months is figure out where we get the most bang for our buck. And I've got this very long list of things that I would like to audit, but I'm realistic also because we do not have an unlimited budget, and we can't audit everything. So it's about figuring out where we can get the most from the relatively limited resources that we have. And I've got a list of a variety of things. First of all, top on the list is that the city charter actually mandates that there be 3 audits that are done of the proprietary departments, a minimum of every 5 years. These are the only ones that are actually required by the charter per se. So the first one up is actually going to be the airport and LAWA. And the last one was done in September of 2008. So you do the math, 5 years is coming up this fall. And then there's also going to be one of DWP. It's the Industrial, Economic, and Administrative Survey. That was last done, it will be 5 years in February of 2014. But before you can snap your fingers, it's going to be February of 2014. And these are going to be really essential and important audits, and requiring a lot of input from everybody here. And I'm really going to look to you to provide that input in a whole variety of different ways. And also to work with those who are in this building. And we have the head of the DWP here as well, and there are some great people here, and some great ideas, and we're going to really find a way to make the most of the information that we gather. And also, not just do the survey, but come up with the best set of recommendations that are possible. And you're an essential part of that. I'm also going to be looking at assets of the city. I'm going to be looking at all those special funds. You probably saw that $42 million that just sort of kind of disappeared and then reappeared. But we've got 500 plus of those. We don't even know how many we have. That's the craziest part of all. And I don't know how much an audit so much is necessary of that at this point, because there have been audits of that. The audits have had recommendations to how you fix the problem, and those have not been implemented. So my focus is going to be on actually implementing those previous audits as opposed to just doing another one. Again, you can have the best audit in the world, but so what if you don't actually implement it? That's got to be the focus. So looking at that, looking at workers' comp issues in the city, looking at risk management, looking at how we do our purchasing and procurement. One of my personal obsessions actually is sales tax paid by the city. The city pays sales tax on pretty much everything it buys, just like you and I do. They're not exempt. And looking at how much we pay for that sales tax, and what we can do to reduce that, and how we can pay more of it to ourselves, because much of it we are paying to other jurisdictions. Doesn't make a great deal of sense. So that means looking at how we do our procurement and our purchasing to make more sense out of it. I think we are at a really critical but also exciting juncture in the city. And we have 3 new citywide officers. And there's an opportunity, of course the controller is independent and has to be able to criticize and sometimes bang people over the head for what's being done that's not right. But there's an equally great opportunity, I've always thought, to really work with everybody in the city and find some solutions that people can collaborate on. And I want to be really in the center of being able to do that, especially with half a new city council and a whole new crop of citywide officers. So enough said on all of this. I thought maybe you've got a couple of questions. If you do, I'm happy to take them, and I am honored to be soon serving as your next controller, and I expect that you will come forward with your ideas, your thoughts, occasionally your criticisms, and it's all part of the process. So thank you very much for the honor of serving.
Yeah, hi, I'm Joyce Stewart. I have a couple of suggestions since I watch the city on a daily basis.
Okay,
There are
great.
no records. One is look at public works. Some of those special funds are tied up in accounts that can no longer be identified. They're in old numbers that don't follow through to new numbers, even in that office. Secondly, they're contracting out to nonprofits on a no-bid basis. General services is about 11% overhead. I'm hearing these nonprofit contracts are 25. big difference. The contract system is broken in the city of LA.
In many ways, by the way, on many, many
On
levels.
many levels in each department, we need a handle on this.
I agree with you 100%. I want to just make one quick comment, by the way. When you talk about the contracting system being broken, there's one contract that I actually looked at, it was about a year and a half ago. And this is a contractor who actually gets compensated for all their out-of-pocket costs. But in addition to that, they get a 10% markup on all of their out-of-pocket costs. If I give you a 10% markup on all your out-of-pocket costs, what is your incentive to reduce your out-of-pocket costs? Zero. What's your incentive to inflate them? Tremendous. So I wonder who allowed such a clause to actually get into a contract. Now, mind you, the controller, it's a bit of a misnomer, doesn't get to control everything, but certainly does get to identify the issues, call attention to them, and see that hopefully they get resolved in some good way. Thank you.
Hi, Ron, Paul Hatfield for Council Valley.
As if I didn't know.
But all right, three quick things. Number one, we need better disclosure in financial statements on the pension liabilities. Might I suggest that perhaps show different scenarios under different earnings rate assumptions. Secondly, I think it's also time that we shop around for a new external auditor. Simpson & Simpson has been doing the job for several years. My concern is that they might be getting too comfortable with the audit. And it's not unusual, by the way, for organizations to go shopping for new auditors every so many years. And then lastly, your point was well taken about, an audit is only effective if it's implemented. Part of the implementation, though, is the quality of the management. And you have to look at the city over the last several years or even longer, and you have to really wonder if, in fact, our managers have been doing an effective job. I know that Mayor Garcetti wants to make each GM interview for his or her job. I would like to suggest that you be part of that process as well and provide your insight in terms of what a good manager would be. I think that would help a lot. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to also just comment real quickly on what you said, because by the way, you've been a leader on pointing out so many very, very important things. First of all, when it comes to department managers, if you are in many departments, okay, let's say you find a way this year to save money and not actually spend your full allocation. Again, what is likely to happen next year? It will be swept by the council, and it will then be taken away. And then what will happen the following year is that you will perhaps get budgeted for less money. So what is your incentive as a department manager to actually save money? And we have to kind of begin to explore how we can change those incentives and disincentives. I don't claim that I have the answer to it, but there are some interesting paradigms that have been put out there. And I think we've got to look at that in addition to who we pick as our managers.
Jack Humphrey, Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council.
Jack!
Amazing I'm opening my mouth once again. Now, my comment, my question, my thought is, I think it would be very worthwhile for people from the neighborhood councils to be able to participate in some way or form in the surveys for the three proprietary departments, DWP, the port, and the harbor. And the reason I say so is that those are exceptionally important economic entities. They probably control about $25 or $35 billion worth of assets, and they are key to the city. And I think some of us would like to have a little bit better understanding and a little more say about how these important things are run. Thank you.
Absolutely correct, by the way. Now, the last industrial economic and administrative survey that was done a while ago, supposedly had roughly about 3,500 stakeholders that were interviewed in one fashion or another, plus about 1,500 employees. But what the nature of that was and how deep that was is a little still unclear to me, and I'm trying to clarify that, because I want to make sure that as we touch all those stakeholders, that the feedback actually is meaningful, and that when we get that feedback, we actually do something with it.
Yeah, from my perspective, these are businesses. We need to take a look at not only the politics of this thing, but how they run, how efficient they are, and what's their market share, let's say at the harbor, for example, which is going down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne?
He's the one with the microphone.
Joanne Vanicard, West Hills Neighborhood Council, and also a budget advocate. Two things. One, will you have any input on performance-based budgeting, which we have been recommending for the past couple of years, and it's still in process. And two, what about the core recommendations? Are you going to be able to affect many more of the core recommendations?
Two great questions. But one on performance-based budgeting, which I think is really important to change the budgeting paradigm in the city of LA in a whole variety of ways, including that. Again, the controller in and of themselves does not get to do that. You need really the mayor and you need the council. But I think we're sort of at a pivotal point where we can have that possibility really come to be. And I want to be part of pushing for that. As far as the core commission is concerned, that's the Commission on Revenue Efficiency, which was created to reform collections. I served as its chair. We first came out with a blueprint of reform for city collections with 65 recommendations, and then a series of 8 reports on a variety of things from assets to procurement, etc. And I have been working to see that many of them are implemented. I am not at all satisfied with the number of them that have actually been implemented, and you bet. And plus I feel very proprietary about them, I have to concede. I want to see them implemented, and I'm going to be relentless about it.
Hey, Ron. My name is Art Cameron with the LaSalle Park Neighborhood Council, and I get prepared to end the policy with the city at the end of fiscal year. Use it or lose it. I worked for the city for 32 years and I saw a lot of money that they were going to say.
You know, I think you really, again, put your finger on that, and we were just talking about that a moment ago, sort of a system of incentives and disincentives, and this use it or lose it, and there's something that is really problematic about that use it or lose it, because then there's a great incentive to use it, and I think we've got to change that. So exactly how we do is still to be determined, and it's going to be dependent on department by department in many ways, but a tremendous opportunity to do that.
Yes, I have one question. I hope it's appropriate. Several people knew Carolina Gary, and I live in Highland Park, Eagle Rock. I'm on the Avenue 49 Division line, up by Occidental College. Several people have asked me to ask you. I never heard of you before. By the way, Ron K. told me you want the best man you vote for you. So I did. And I told all my neighbors. But the question is this. We are different in CD14 that we have a fund called the Clark's Fund. Would you please, everybody has begged, written, no response. We know there's close to $1 million in that fund at this time. Would you please find a way or ask people from CD14 that are in CPAs or something to volunteer to assist you and do an audit on there? We beg you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You don't have to beg me, because it's actually, I think, a very important thing to do. And it's part of that whole picture of all of those many special funds. And that's just one of a huge number that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's actually the top of my list.
Thank you.
And send me an email with some details about this. I will give you my card. Okay?
Glenn Bailey, also budget advocate. The auditor, when the controller did the audit on neighborhood council several years ago, and she went on the road, and I think there was probably 1 or 2 meetings. But I think that brings up in a suggestion, maybe that's where you're getting at, of when you do come out with an audit, especially if it's based on services or departments that neighborhood councils deal with, it might be a good thing to bring them together, representatives of them, at least of the regional alliances, but maybe invite a representative of each neighborhood council to actually be there with you and your staff to understand more in depth and ask questions about the audits. So when we go back out into our communities, we can say, yeah, we know about this audit on this particular department, and this is what the recommendations are. Because ultimately, I think bringing those issues to light to get the implementation of the audits and getting that public support is what we have to try to find. And it seems to me that maybe that's a way that you can help mobilize that public support by, focusing in communication with the neighborhood councils.
I agree with you 100%, by the way, and I think it's not just a good idea, but I think it's legally obligatory. Because what I used to do, especially as a neighborhood council person, and I advise everybody to do this every now and then, is go back and refresh yourself with what the city charter actually says about neighborhood councils, and with what your obligations are. And as neighborhood council members, and one of them is actually in the assessment of city services. And that is, I think, ultimately one of the most important functions that the neighborhood council serve. So I wanted to actually be able to help in the compliance, in fact, with that legal obligation. Speaking of which, legal obligations, welcome to our city attorney-elect. And congratulations to you. And I have to say, I really look forward to working with you in so many ways as we have in the past. And our city has a fantastic city attorney-elect. So, and I'm really fortunate to have the opportunity to be working with you. So, congratulations.
Very much the same way.
Group hug. How are you? Thank you. And I think this is it.
My name's Dee Dee Odette.
Hello, Judy.
And I'm so glad to meet you. You're making me happy. I voted for you.
Oh, thank you.
But I have a little request.
Okay, I hope you still feel the same way 4 years from now, by the way, so it's my job to make sure that's the case.
Keep it up and you'll be there. Now, just coming from the MOU meeting, and I am the MOU rep from Venice. It occurs to me, in my past experience, that sometimes clerical timing can make a huge difference, bringing people together. Will you please see to it that your office and our ratepayer advocate are working from the same set of documents?
Absolutely, same set of documents, same set of calendar, and actually on a regular basis, really being in touch with each other. And being on the same page in terms of what the inquiries are going to be of the ratepayer advocate, as well as what the controllers are going to be. It doesn't do anybody any good to be operating in a vacuum, but it's a very good reminder.
Hello, I'm Mary Benson, former budget advocate and currently city employee. My concern is with the city's collection policy. Recently I went through what various entities owed in our Northeast Valley, now District 7 corner of the world. It was almost $700,000 that the city later wrote off. And that is my big concern, is that if the billings are too little, too late, not timely, we run a business for a long time. If we bill our customers 6 months, 8 months after we perform the service, sometimes they wouldn't even be in business. And it's a big concern of mine if you feel that this is a revenue stream that the city is constantly on the back end of and losing.
I would love to have an even longer conversation with you on that subject, because this was one of my great obsessions and still is for a very long time, and which is why the whole Commission on Energy Efficiency came into being. Because at the time, there was about $500 million in non-tax receivables that are on the books. Although much of that, admittedly, non-collectible for a whole variety of reasons. Much of it not legally collectible, much of it phantom debt. But we came forward with a set of recommendations that would actually streamline the process. And by the way, make it much easier to pay. The easier you make it to pay, the more likely you are to get that money. So if you've got some specific ideas, then I would like to work with you on this.
Thank you. This should be our last question, because we have to get City Attorney-elect Feuer in, because he has to leave at 11:30. So that's the last question.
Kenneth Wiley, People Union Neighbor Council and the Boyle Heights Neighbor Council. First off, just congratulations on your position, and I just wanted to bring a couple of things. During an advocate meeting, we were told that there's a browser-based accounting system that the city purchased at some hundreds of thousands of dollars that is starting in the planning department and in the street lighting. And I've mentioned it at several meetings that would be something that would be good if the neighborhood council, especially as regions, could tap in and aggregate dollars and figures and accounting at that level. And then the second thing, starting as of today, there's a 3-month project that the IT department is doing on an open government project, and they've selected the Esri company, who just put up a website that was sent to me yesterday, to actually do an open data project, which would also be a great program initiative for us to tie into from a financial and demographical basis.
These are really great observations. Thank you so much. And something that I'm trying to get a real feel for all of the various accounting systems and online systems and software that we have in the city. One of the largest ones is the so-called FMS system, or financial management system, and it has been implemented over time. It's actually resulted in some good improvements, but there are also some modules of it that are still missing. Moreover, the info that it spits out is only as good as the info that is put into it, as with any kind of system like that. And I have some issues with the data that is being put in there, which in some ways I think is corrupting the data that comes out of it. So that's on the agenda, and thank you for the card.
Let's thank Ron for coming out.
I was just going to say, what a pleasure it's been to work with so many of you in this room, how much I'm looking forward to doing so in the coming years, and what progress we have seen and done, and what opportunities there are yet to achieve. So, again, thank you. I'm going to have an open door, an open email, and look forward to the ideas, the thoughts, occasionally, of course, even the criticisms. And all of that is going to be very helpful in making sure that we can do the best job possible at the Controller's Office. So thank you very, very much.
I just give you and City Attorney here a IFRS. Yes, so because we're very supportive and we look forward to working with you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, they're gonna have to change their.
Yeah.
Oh. I guess you want to take one picture of us with the crowd behind us, so we can and then we'll get going.
Photo op.
So can you all stand up and let's give them a big round of applause and show them the kind of support they're going to get for the next 8 years.
Now, right. Okay, we got it. Okay, we got the pedal over here, so on through, right. So let's welcome our City Attorney-elect, Mike Feuer.
Good morning. Thanks very much for having me here today. I have a finite amount of time today, and that's just a matter of fact in my schedule. So I'm going to speak for a relatively short amount of time so I can take as many questions from you as possible in the time we have together. So many of you know, because I've worked with you for many cases for many, many years, that I'm a huge believer in neighborhood councils. That when I was on the city council, I started neighborhood councils before the charter required them. And on the council, I led the city's effort to propel charter reform forward and worked very hard to ensure a muscular role for neighborhood councils in the charter. And then in at least one of the neighborhood councils in my district, the South Robertson Neighborhoods Council, I said to them early on that I wanted to experiment and provide meaningful land use authority to them over key decisions within their area. I wanted to find a way, when I was first starting the neighborhood council effort in my district and in the city as a member of the council, to show neighborhoods that it really matters if you choose to engage in improving quality of life in your community. I'm not a big fan of meetings for the sake of meetings. I am a fan of trying to identify concrete changes that we can make together to show people the value of community engagement. I'm a big believer in getting people from across a wide spectrum of positions involved in neighborhood decision-making. And now, as I ran for city attorney, I spoke before many of your neighborhood councils, and we talked about the importance of neighborhoods to my campaign, and now neighborhoods in effectuating the most important goals in the city. There needs to be a deep connection between the city attorney and neighborhood councils on many levels. You're probably aware that I am focused on revitalizing the neighborhood prosecutor program. Why? Because it's a way for the city attorney's office to connect to specific goals of neighborhood councils and clergy and small business and schools and parents in a neighborhood, so we can show you that the intervention of the justice system made a big difference. Whether it's making sure kids can walk to school safely, or getting rid of this nuisance, or focusing in a much more effective way on code enforcement, a whole array of issues that we need to do together. Now, as I said, I don't want to speak for very long, but I'll give you a little glimpse as to what's happening now. So, as a city attorney-elect, I'm very respectful of the fact that I'm not the city attorney yet, and Mr. Buchanan and I have forged a very good relationship as we move forward with the transition. But in the meantime, I am myself forming a transition team, and we're going to soon set about to work. And I want you to know that among the key priorities I will be tasking my transition team to focus on is this neighborhood piece. Neighborhood prosecutors, forging close and effective ties with neighborhood councils, looking at the issue I mentioned earlier of safety in and around school sites, and a lot more. And I'm going to pause there. We can talk about anything you want. I really want this to be as responsive a moment as I can offer to you. But it's just a moment. We're going to have a lot more work together. Again, some of us have history that goes back to the mid-1990s. For others of you, I'm a new person. You've been and voted for somebody else. That's cool. At this time, we need to unify in a city that will only be the best it can be with our partnership. So let me pause and take your questions. And by the way, and just 1 second, let me just say that I know that I am at a stage now where I have a lot to learn, including about the nitty-gritty of the office, let alone about a specific priority in a given neighborhood. If I know an answer, I will tell it to you as directly as I can. If I don't know, I will find out. Please, well, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you very much. I'm Cindy Clayhorn, someone to
I know who you are.
Thank you, and thank you for being at the Congress in 2011 and 2012, and we look forward to seeing you in 2013 on September 28th. My question is really broad because I've been around the neighborhood council system for many years now, and what I, in my experience, see is dancing. Here we are in neighborhood councils trying to improve the quality of life in our neighborhoods. I'm happy to hear about the neighborhood prosecutor program, but I have some major issues that have been on the table and that don't get fixed, or that are going to continue to impact us. One being the relaxation of how the city planning department interprets their decision-making in planning decisions, specifically SB 1818, that we can over impact our communities with dense development where it doesn't belong. The community care facilities ordinance, where we have the nuisance of that. Existing LA municipal codes and ordinances being misinterpreted. The AGF ordinance, which has never gotten finished, and it's over 6 years. The medical marijuana dispensaries. Here we have sites in our community to try to bring jobs and development and good business to our community, and we have, bars on windows and buildings left derelict. Anyway, I hear that the city attorney's function is to represent the city council, and so you're only really advising them in what they do. What can you do to emphasize these are some hot topics that will help us as we move forward to improve the quality of life in our neighborhoods?
Great, okay. So there is obviously no way for me to go through that list and answer each of the challenges you've raised, but let me talk in general terms for a second. It is imperative that we do everything we can to listen carefully to each other and then to work together. I don't mean that as a platitude, so let me talk about how to express that. I anticipate spending meaningful time in your neighborhoods working with neighborhood councils, not only through my staff, but myself. It's also the case, and this is really going to more to the heart of your question, I think, that I, as the city attorney, need to be able to work closely with the city council members and the mayor to assure that when there's an idea that gets in the way through the process, at the earliest stages, we avoid pitfalls. And that's where our Rhonda's partnership can come in. Those pitfalls can be, legal issues, they can be neighborhood-specific issues, but if I'm aware of them at an early stage, and council members and the mayor trust me enough to be in at the initial stages of the process, we can figure out how to avoid stalling later on because we've worked those problems out at the beginning. As a lawyer, that's, I think, one of the most effective ways to practice. You work with your client early on, trying to identify potential hurdles and then circumvent those hurdles as you make your way through the process. Too often in the city, we see the opposite approach. Matters make their way through the city council, the mayor supports it, and then they stall. They stall because there hasn't been that process I described at the onset, and that's going to change. I'm still working myself on figuring out what the best structure of the city attorney's office should be when it comes to these issues. For example, now there are basically two broad divisions in the office, civil and criminal. Well, there used to be an office of general counsel in the office, the essence of which was to assure timely response to departments and to the council on getting through ordinances and that kind of thing. Is that structural change a good idea or not? Going back to where we were, so we can get to the heart of what you're talking about, which is keeping faith with voters. Maybe I'm looking at it. There are going to be specific expressions early on of how effective this teamwork can be. And you mentioned one of them off the bat, which is Measure D. I don't know exactly what steps I want to take yet. I was elected last week. But I do know this, that neighborhoods have a big role to play when it comes to the implementation of Measure D. Because we have to identify even the sites that are going to be permissible under Measure D and how we enforce with regard to those sites that aren't. Those are neighborhood issues. So what you're hearing from me is some themes, but that means real precision. One of the issues that you mentioned. But the themes all boil down to an early, effective listening process by me, so we can ensure an effective process of implementation at the end of the road. Yes.
Hi, Mike, congratulations.
Thank you.
And, I'm Jack Lindblad, I lead Neighborhood Council Community Improvement Chair, and Panorama City Land Use Member, and I'm an architect, an advocate for transit development, transit communities, and transit districts. So when we look at using the taxpayer, ratepayer money in Los Angeles efficiently, I personally want to put a shout out to the combination of the building and safety and planning. On the other hand, the two departments have been separated, not great gloriously in the past, but neighborhood councils have planning issues and they have building enforcement issues. And when you put the two interests together, it's a blur. And maybe the city attorney can have an over the horizon radar out for how developers might take advantage of the situation.
Okay, and let me, I know there's not a real concrete question, and then let me make a couple observations if I could. So first of all, let me take a very specific problem that many of you have addressed. That's not actually embedded in your question, but it's used as an example. The problem of voluntary conditions and how they relate to actual promises kept in the neighborhood. Who here doesn't know what I'm talking about? So here's the issue. Oftentimes, there are some very specific agreements reached between the city of Los Angeles as a city with regard to mitigation measures for a project, for example, and a development. There are, however, in addition to those, sometimes agreements reached between a neighborhood organization and a developer. And the developer says, I will, beyond the scope of what the city requires as a voluntary matter, I will agree to perform the following 5 tasks or mitigations. And then the question comes later on, are those enforceable or not? And in general, the rule has been it's tough to enforce in many times. And that breaks faith between a community and the developer, between a community and the city government. As city attorney, one step I need to take is providing very strong advice at the earliest stages to our planning staff to assure that there is a tight nexus that they can establish between goals the community has and what the developer is seeking to do. If you establish that nexus early on and the city's involved in creating conditions that can be enforced under city rules, you avoid the problem later on of potential lack of performance, with the because there's no such thing as a voluntary condition that's enforceable. And people have been misled about that. By telling you a little bit about that particular issue, it gets an insight into how I want to be a city attorney. I want to avoid situations where at the end of the road, you say, what the heck? We thought XYZ was going to be the case, and now it's done. You know, I didn't run to be the leader on medical marijuana enforcement. I'm going to be the leader on medical marijuana enforcement because the voters expect it. Right? I mean, this is what I mean by that, right? So, you know, was that a key goal of mine in the campaign? It was an issue. I had other issue goals as well, but because the voters chose to make that the rule of the city, I supported Measure B, by the way, because they chose to make that the rule of the city. You can be darn sure that one of my top priorities is going to be to keep faith with you on making that law work. So, other questions?
David Hughes, with that neighborhood council, but still involved on the eastern portion of the certain of the 70 district in Greater Griffith Park neighborhood council, planning zoning.
You know, Broadway stand.
Still have a condo over there.
Yeah.
But one of the issues that came up, we're finding in some cases where we're being played in our council meetings, in our committee meetings, and in particular there was a CUP involved with a restaurant bar that made noise to neighbors. The question that we're drafting, some of the councils in the area, and some of the other ones are sharing, I'm going to paraphrase briefly and informally for you tonight, this morning. When a neighborhood council...
Once you read it, it's not brief or informal. Go ahead.
If we find out in the course of the hearing that the stakeholders that are present at that hearing have a lawsuit or insurance claim as part of the deliberations, what can we ask in regards to people who are making that as to the nature of the suit the claimants, not the claimant, monetary loss. We had a deliberation, and the next day, after they had complained about the restaurant, there was a settlement. And we want to make sure we're not being played and we ask the right questions. So we're informed by what the real motives are of the people who are representing their state and their claim.
Okay, I'm not actually really sure I understand the question. Let me try to restate it and be sure that I do, okay? So, are you saying you've been involved as a neighborhood council member in situations where there's a pending CUP and a group, not you, is bringing a lawsuit with regard to some of the same issues that you're concerned about? Then that group reaches a settlement with the proponent of the CUP, and you're not allowed to know what's in the settlement because it's confidential. How do you avoid that? Is that your question?
Well, more particularly, while they are at our hearing, we're asking them, well, you now know that you have a lawsuit about that. Knowing the nature of that lawsuit would allow us to better judge.
Okay. So before it's worse, the filing, let's separate issues. The filing of a lawsuit and the content of that lawsuit is public information. And you don't even need to ask them. You can get it from court records. That's different from a settlement. Not always, but many times when there's a settlement that's negotiated, the terms of that settlement include a confidentiality provision. And that term is injected into that settlement because the parties have, for many reasons. There's nothing that anybody after the fact can do to unwind that confidentiality. But if you're aware of a lawsuit on day one, and anybody is not sharing with you the content of that, you can just find it out. Just find it from court records around the lawsuit. You can just get electronically. So I think there are some very practical ways to avoid the problem you're describing, but there is no way that I can suggest to you that you can, after the fact, insert yourself into someone else's settlement and make what is confidential public. That I can't suppose. Fair enough? Please.
Hi, Mary Benson, formerly of Foothill Trails District Neighborhood Council. In our neighborhood council, we have the city attorney representing the city in a $650,000 lawsuit against a developer who has been postponing final judgment for 7 years in court. And the city attorney has done a great job, I've got to say. But my question is, in order to avoid that, had he been issued a fine, a ticket, so to speak, and now there's a proposal for active code enforcement that would reduce those issues to a misdemeanor where if the developer didn't do something, it could be cited over and over again for violation. How do you stand on the ACE program? Is that something?
Great question. Great question. So again, just so we're all on the same page, who doesn't know the essence of the ACE program? Everybody okay, we're all on the same page? Good, okay. So I'm a big supporter of that idea. I think it's important for us, and this is language for a long time, it's been kind of a pilot project and it's been limping along, right? I cannot tell you as I stand here now with precision exactly how we're going to jumpstart it, but a priority of mine is to make it work. And let me talk to you about ACE, and you happen to raise something indirectly that I want to talk to you about as well. I think that if a developer has violated rules along the way, that the developer should not be able to proceed until they rectify the situation first. Right? And so, and it's called the clean hands policy, right? And the city and the county has that rule in place. I want to see that rule in place in the city. And I know there's been some action taken to move along those lines. I want to bring that action to conclusion. It's only right. As to code enforcement, when I was on the city council, I'm the first city attorney ever to have served as a city council member. So I have a sense of a client's perspective as well in this process. When I was in the city council, I was frustrated too and began to explore the essence of this is how to make these infractions as opposed to what requires a long court proceeding, because there are thousands of code violations that go unenforced. There are two reasons why I think it's imperative that the city find a more efficient way to enforce codes. The first reason is the intrinsic value of the violation that's at stake in rectifying them. These are often small things, sometimes they're more consequential, and they erode the quality of life in neighborhoods. So that's the first most important reason. There's a second reason too. If you see the city incapable, apparently, of enforcing rules that exist, you lose faith in city government. And that's a bad thing. I mean, I don't pretend, I was saying we were all this cute once, but some of us maybe not really ever that cute. I've been upstage many times, just so you know, so it's all right. Won't be the first time here. But I wanted to say, I think that there is, at the heart of your question, a much deeper issue. And that is, cities, I don't pretend that government can solve everybody's problem. It can't. It shouldn't. But unless government is deemed to be an effective partner with you and actually gets things done, you won't want to engage anymore. Why should you be part of a process that doesn't ever get anywhere? That's the antithesis of how the city should work. The reason I wanted to create neighborhood councils back in the 1990s is I wanted to demonstrate that it matters to get involved. That but for you, things wouldn't be as good as now they are. And people will be inspired to work together. That's a key why code enforcement is so important. Let me give you another example. And I think there's another question, but I want to say one more thing about another iteration of the same problem that I care a lot about. In the state legislature, I was a joint author of the Homeowners Bill of Rights. When I ran Bethsedic Legal Services, I used to run a public interest law firm. When I ran Bethsedic, we were very focused on trying to prevent people from losing their houses, mostly someone's grandma losing a house to scam artists. I'm really into the issue of foreclosures and the blight that they cause when lenders don't maintain properties. And as I walk door to door in many of your neighborhoods, from Van Nuys to South Los Angeles, people tell me about, look at that house over there. No one is fixing it up. It's foreclosed. Look over here. And I was very concretely, I was on a street in an area south of downtown, and a minister approached me in front of one such house who recognized me. And the minister said to me, how do you think our kids feel walking by this blighted property that's been foreclosed upon that is not being maintained on their way to school every day? About their neighborhood, about their quality of life. And by the way, drugs could be dispensing places. Bad things happen. And then he saw me 2 weeks ago or so, and he said to me, by the way, that building burned down. What's happening in that neighborhood? You know how many fines have been imposed pursuant to the city's ordinance that requires lenders to maintain their foreclosed properties? In 2 years, how many fines did you get? 0. Right. What does that tell a community? I know what it tells a community. It says, why should I bother to vote? Why should I bother to care when the city can't do this? One of the key reasons I ran to be your city attorney is to change that. There are so many, and I purposely have gone beyond your questions, there are so many examples of the same kind of problem that exists in the city. And there is no way I'll be able to be an effective leader in changing this without you. No way. Because almost all these issues are neighborhood-specific issues. That's why I'm here now. This was not a convenient morning for me, I can just tell you. I wanted to be here, I changed things around to be here because I wanted to send that message to you from the get-go. I'm sorry to keep you standing so long, please.
Good morning, my name is Lana McLeod Smith. I represent the Apartment Complex Central Area Neighborhood.
Great.
Where I serve as secretary. I have a question, and the first question that I have is, since the city attorney's office is overwhelmed due to a lack of staff, and how do you plan to address the issues of the 95 neighborhood councils, the issues that we have monthly, weekly, daily?
Right.
The second question I have is, well, it's not a question, it's a suggestion. So I'll let you answer first.
Okay. The first question begs a whole bunch of other questions. I don't know yet. You know, look, the budget is a mess. The city attorney's budget has been decimated. When I was on the council, there were maybe, I don't know, 100 lawyers more than there are now, and that was, a dozen years ago. And so we have to not only prioritize more effectively given the scarcity of resources, that's one of my apples of my job, but also I need to forge partnerships with the city council and the mayor so that they believe accurately that the work of the city attorney's office is so integral to making their goals real that they have to fund a city attorney's office at a higher level. I need your help in that. We need to be a team in that, because I cannot provide the service that you have a right to expect to you under the current structure of the budget. I can't. So I can't tell you precisely how I'm going to change things to try to be more effective given the scarcity resources now, but it's a priority of mine to try. And then as I'm in office, ideally we'll build on these relationships. The mayor and I have already met, the mayor-elect rather, have already met. We have a very strong relationship. The budget chair was my seatmate in the state legislature. I have strong relations with many of the city council members, but those relationships only get so far. If I'm effective in leading an office that itself delivers, people will want to fund us and I can provide more services. If we are not effective, then we don't deserve the money. And that's the challenge right now. Next observation.
Well, I'll step up to the plate and assist you in that area, just give me a call out with my card.
Very good.
What I wanted to suggest was establishing a committee, maybe that meets directly with you on a monthly basis that is representative of all of the neighborhood councils. And that way we can bring our hot topics to you on a monthly basis. Yeah. And we can do we're willing to do what we can on our end, but sometimes things are out of our hands and we do need the help.
So let's do this. Listen, whether it's every month, every 6 weeks, every hour, whatever it is, let's find a way to have regular lines of communication, and not with every neighborhood council in every meeting. I think it might, if we're going to do this, it makes sense to take bite-sized chunks. So, because see, one of the things that you can tell that's really important to me is not making promises I can't keep. If we're having, a laundry list from 95 neighborhood councils of 10 items each, there's no way to accomplish that. But a finite number of issues over in increments over a period of time, and then we can start to build trust with each other. I think by being effective a little bit, we start to trust each other more. I have a problem. I need to leave. Can I do, there's one last very quick question, please? Forgive me, but thanks so much for the questions, the observations, and for the offer of help. And this is not the last time we're going to talk. This is we have so much more to do. Yeah, Jay.
Hi, Jay Handel. I'm chair of West LA, and I chair of Budget Advocates, co-chair of Budget Advocates. First, I want to reiterate the issue about the neighborhood council staff that you have working with us. As an embedded person in a number of neighborhood councils, one of the issues I deal with almost daily now is having to be able to get my city attorney on the phone when I'm at this neighborhood council or that neighborhood council. And the city attorney's staffing of neighborhood councils is woefully low. And if we're going to try and help rebuild and fix this system, I think one of the things in the budget we really need to look at is how we can really support the staff of the neighborhood council city attorneys. The second thing is the neighborhood prosecutors program. When it all got pulled back into downtown away from the regions, I can tell you from the west side, it killed us. Right? It was really effective, and we as neighborhood council people, I believe, will all work together with your office to try and find a way to work with the budget and the mayor and the city council to beat those things up, because you hit it on the head. Everything we don't enforce causes 10 more things not to get enforced, which causes everybody to just say, I've had it. I'm done.
So let me do it only because of time. Let me say two quick things in response to Jay, and also to say that I know others of you have questions that I don't have time to answer. They're already actually going to be that's up for my next meeting. We're going to do this. We might do it on the basis that was just described in small groups periodically. This is not the last time we're going to talk, and there are lots of lines of communication where I don't think I'll fill them all. So we have a lot of preliminary work we can do, and I just don't want people to feel uptight because I can't stay. In terms of the neighborhood prosecutor program, let me just mention for a moment. When I was on the city council, and I was there from 95 to 2001, so it was before most of you were born, but I was there. Well, Steve Twain was there, but otherwise, I wanted to create a community-based prosecution model for the city attorney's office. I also wanted to balance that or match that with the creation of a community court system in the city. I took leaders of the court system in Los Angeles to Times Square and to Red Hook and Brooklyn, where there are effective community courts in action. The notion of a community court has to do with a concept called restorative justice. The basic thrust of which is the community has been offended by a quality of life crime, prostitution, graffiti, whatever it is in the neighborhood. The community needs to see that problem rectified with the offender participating in rectifying it. And then the offender should have some services available to her, so that we reduce the likelihood of repeating the crime, of recidivism. That was the basic structure of this. Bring the office into communities and have the justice system address the concrete issues, those problems that cause. I ran for city attorney thereafter, and I lost. I won the primary, I lost the general election. The notion of this community-based prosecution became the neighborhood prosecutor program. My point is, for well over a decade, I've been riveted on this idea. The community court process actually got $1 million earmark from Congress to create this in Los Angeles, and then I didn't win. And as a result, that language. I want to revitalize that core idea again, of a justice system whose intervention has made a difference in whether your neighborhood has safe pageants for kids, or whether there's a business district you're proud of nearby. So I mentioned the neighborhood prosecutor program in this vein. This is not some passing political theme for me that ends on the day of the election. This is an abiding goal of mine. I met with the chief of police yesterday. We talked about the importance of this program. Everywhere I go, we're going to try to find ways to do this. Going back to your question, the budget is crumbling. I don't have new money to hire new people to make this happen right now. So what do we do together? I'm going to have to somehow rearrange some people in the office, and I can't do anything overnight, but we're going to build this up. We're going to build it up. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate it. The best thing we were going to walk out with that applause. I'm not going to get it again. I realize that.
Okay, if you guys want to take a few-minute break, be able to go to the restroom or fill your coffee or that, and then we'll get back on to business.
Somehow I lost. Oh, maybe that's.
That's fun. Almost.
Yes, it's on their own. Yes, they have no card. First of all, it's how